Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of T-Man Speaks, Talk with T-Man, and I'm so lucky today to have Bill Schmarzo as a guest. Bill, how are you doing?
T-Man, I am doing great, thanks.
That's awesome. Well, I don't have to give too much of an introduction to Bill. We all know him. He is the Dean of Big Data. He has also recently become the CTO of Hitachi Vantara, which I'm so curious to hear more about. He's got a broad background in analytics, big data, IoT, and such a broad perspective. He's got a great voice to the young nation and how they're learning about artificial intelligence and data science and big data. And he's got me as a student. Heck, you've got thousands, it must be hundreds of thousands of students by this point there. Bill, so great to have you. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great for an early Sunday morning. I'm doing fine.
Fantastic, and in a Starbucks, so great to see. Glad you have your coffee. Oh yeah, there I can see the beans on the wall. Oh, nice. We got a whole perspective.
Got an action photo.
Nice, very well done. So this is fantastic. So much appreciate you doing this. So we've been back and forth on social media. We met through social media. Certainly common interests through cloud, through data science, through big data, data analytics, the whole digital transformation and how big of a term that is, right? So, this is great to spend some time on a vlogcast here and get a little better perspective on what you're working on, your story. You've got such an incredible message, certainly contributing to, so many young people out there and how they approach technology. So first of all, I mean, you didn't just show up where you didn't fly in the DeLorean and get out and jump out and say, I'm here, right? So let's hear a little bit about you. There's Doc right there.
Doc Brown is my model, so maybe I did.
You very well could have. If Marty shows up, I'm not going to be surprised, right? I'm really not. So that's awesome. So yeah, let's hear a little bit about your story, how you came to be, and how you got to the role you're in today.
All right. Well, let's start with that Dean of Big Data moniker, because it's kind of a interesting story. I was asked. At the very first Strata conference here in San Jose, I was contacted, I don't even remember by who at that point in time, might have been Ed, who said, we'd like to have somebody who can bring a business perspective to it. Can you create kind of a mini MBA for engineers, for our data scientists? And I said, sure, I'll do that. And so I dug up the old Michael Porter books, value chain analysis and 5 forces analysis, and a lot of things that I'd covered in an MBA school, and I did an hour session at Strata, and it was very popular. And so after I'd done that, I came back and was speaking on theCUBE, and I was kind of explaining to theCUBE what I had done, and I think it was John Furrier said, well, you're like the Dean of Big Data. And it stuck. And so
nice. Well, that's cool to hear that story. Yeah.
So then that led to me writing a couple of books on the Big Data MBA, and and as you know, T-Man, my focus has always been on the business and economics impact of big data and data science. Now, I'm not really a technology guy. I know enough probably to get myself in trouble. But the biggest challenge, I think, is not on the technology side. It's in how we use the technology, how we are leveraging technology to really drive and optimize our key business and operational processes, how to mitigate risk, how to mitigate compliance problems, how to uncover new monetization opportunities, and really how do we provide a compelling, differentiated user experience through it. So it's much more on the business side than on the technology side.
Yeah, totally. I see that too, and I've learned so much, from you on that point. And let's start there before we get into all the great emerging tech and everything else. From a fundamental level, when you look at digital transformation and truly look at making some steps along there to kind of, engage with that and embrace that and really enable it. Love to get some pointers on your perspective. You touch on monetizing. And monetizing may be money, it may be efficiency, and maybe so many different things. But I'd love to get some perspective for the viewers from you on that.
So let's talk about monetization first, because I think that's a really key point. Because many organizations, when you talk to, especially CIOs who have been browbeaten to, help me monetize my data. The edict comes down from up high, from the CEO and the board of directors, monetize our data, and the first response is, well, I'm going to go out and try to sell my data. Right? Monetize, in that sense, it means value in exchange, right? That's what Adam Smith talked about in his book, Wealth of Nations. There's value in exchange, which, how much somebody's willing to pay you for that is how much it's worth. And our entire accounting system is based on value in exchange. However, Adam Smith also talked about, who is the father of modern day economics, he talks about value in use. That is, an asset's value is determined by what value you get from using it. And when you think about data and analytics, it's not so much your ability to sell it as it is to use it. I mean, think about having superior insights into your customers, their preferences, their inclinations, their tendencies, their relationships, and how I can use that information to recommend products and services and offerings and partners and movies and books and spouses and all kinds of things. So if you focus on the value in use conversation, it naturally forces organizations, or it should naturally force organizations, to think about the use cases where I can use data and analytics to derive and drive business value. So that is the foundation. It's not a value in exchange. It's not how much my data is worth for me to sell it to somebody, but it's how much value I gain in the use of that data to really drive and optimize my key business and operational use cases.
For sure, and you touch on some really great points. It's not just about external, how do I drive money out of this, but it's how do I drive value, both externally and both internally. And I've seen some things around that, and certainly curious on your perspective from that point of view. So, really it's not about just chasing technology or terms just because industry's going after. And what I'd be curious about, so you've been, many, are one of the earlier adopters, or involved in all this and see this technology unfolding, from a big data perspective. So once you've got that kind of view of monetizing, and where some values are, you've kind of maybe done some whiteboarding, and you're kind of at a perspective of what next directions. What are some other things that you're seeing out there, or ways to approach it effectively?
So, T-Man, the way to start this conversation is the whiteboarding's good, and really understanding what the technology can do. That's IT's job, right? What is the technology capable of doing? But if you don't bring the business stakeholders into this process on day one, you're in trouble. And the reason why that's important, think about a data scientist and how important it is to develop a solid hypothesis you want to test. And you want to know the objectives of that hypothesis. You want to know the KPI, what you're going to measure progress and success. You want to think through the unintended consequences, the second, third level of impact that those metrics might have. You want to understand the costs of false positives and false negatives. So there's a lot of process that has to happen before the data science team starts doing their exploration and discovery, and that's around defining what does success look like and what are the ramifications of success. So we run these things called envisioning workshops, and they're about a 2-day exercise. We bring executives in and we really brainstorm around a key business initiative, the decisions they're trying to make, the predictions they would like to make to support those decisions, what data they might need, might be in a key word there, to make those predictions, and finally, how are we going to manifest those analytic insights in an intelligent application, for example. So don't downplay. Our industry does this all the time, which is don't downplay how much work has to be done before you ever start the journey. And I like to tell my students, if you're flying from San Francisco to Washington, D.C., and you're off by 1 degree, you land in Baltimore, right? Okay.
Love that. Right. Yeah.
So you got to know what you're going to happen. So once you set that frame, and once you got the business stakeholders bought into that frame, now it's a process of high iteration with with the business stakeholders, lots of early mock-ups, lots of early results, bantering things back and forth, and it becomes this scrum match journey for both parties as you get closer and closer to coming up with some analytics that the business users feel confident that they can use to start making business decisions.
That's a fantastic point. And it really is about those end users, and I see that too.
Yeah, I
mean, like yourself, I'm not, I can figure out technology, I understand technology, but I'm much more about the conversation and, how do we look for the bigger picture and then get engineers to tell me yes or no. They give me the check, right? But I understand what you can do with it, and I get that end user control. I mean, that's why cloud applications have taken off outside of technology in the early days, is because of that very reason. They were focused on the business line, right? And we're certainly seeing that. So now that, from that perspective and all this, changing landscape, what are some things that you're working on and with your team? I know you've been traveling around the globe and doing some exciting stuff, right? I know that technology, we hear all this thing about artificial intelligence and robotics, and yes, there are some really advancing technologies, and it's quite exciting. I'd be curious about building blocks today. Like I'm just heading to an event here next week in New York with IBM Analytics on winning with AI, and I'd be curious from your perspective in that game as well, right? What are some things, because where I'm seeing it is, what can you do today to enable things for technology when you don't even completely know what that technology picture will look like even 2 to 5 years down the road?
So the books I'm reading right now, I don't have it with me right now, I was going to show it to you. The books I'm reading right now are focused on design thinking and economics. Right? They're not, I get plenty of good material on, artificial intelligence and neural networks. Twitter is full of really, really smart people who are sharing phenomenal material on that stuff. And it's great. It's the tools of the modern industry, right? It's the artificial intelligence and machine learning and all, Keras and TensorFlow and all these things. These are the tools that today's architects are going to build tomorrow's businesses. But if you don't have an economics understanding, and if you don't understand design thinking, which is really, design thinking does some really important things for an organization. First off, design thinking is great on helping to uncover things that the business stakeholders don't know that they know. Right? A series of black magic techniques and tools that design thinkers use to really uncover these heuristics that are buried deep inside a person's mind, a subject matter expert's mind, like a technician who's trying to keep a fleet of trucks running. They know all kinds of little heuristics. Our data science challenge is to turn heuristics into math, into code. So Design thinking is great teasing those things out, but the other thing design thinking does is it's very useful at driving organizational alignment and adoption. Now, the techniques that they use with the business stakeholders, not only does it help us to uncover what they don't really know that they know, but in the end, it makes certain that what we are building is central to what they want to do. So not only do they align to what we're trying to build, or we align to what they need, but they also adopt it. Because the biggest problem we see in a lot of technologies is we've got some amazing models being built by some giant-brained data scientists, and the business users look at them like they got lobsters crawling out of their ears and going, well, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really solve my problem. I saw this great demonstration of it was a UI that had all kinds of AI built into it on a laptop, and it was doing all this really cool stuff. And the guy who looked at it, who was a field technician, looked at it and said, I don't carry a laptop around in the field. I carry this.
Well, it's like Doc trying to tell anybody about the flux capacitor. Most people would be like, what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah, you don't know what it does until you get in and fly that sucker around. And then you don't know where you're going to land, right? You got to be careful.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, so looking at that, and design is key. So we know from an economics perspective, you got to drive the value of it, right? So then getting to those next bigger building blocks of design, across the board buy-in, best design, right? So from what you're seeing in the marketplace right now, from, an IoT perspective and edge, and how people are better utilizing that, and where is today from a perspective of what we know about machine learning and what we know about things in the field and better management of that whole data lake and data science model. How does it go from design to capturing all those things, and what are some industries that you're seeing that are really keen into this environment?
Good question, Tony. In the IoT space, so let me first clarify. Grabbing sensor data, dropping it into a data lake, and doing analytics on it is big data. Been doing that for a long time now, right? 4 or 5 years.
Right.
What makes IoT very unique is what's happening at the edge. There's a huge volume of data coming off all these sensors. The vast majority of that data is not even useful or not material, right? You get 10 readings every second from a sensor on the heat of a drill bit, and the temperature never changes. It's 98, 98, 98, 98, 98, right? Yeah. I don't need to have a gigabyte of 98, 98, 98 to tell me anything. So there's intelligence required at the edge to figure out what data is of most value, and that's going to require intelligence, right? So what we're going to see is more and more of the intelligence, the organizational intelligence, going to the edge, where organizations are trying to make near real-time decisions around the edge, around yield optimization and performance degradation and anomaly detection. So there's the interesting thing about IoT for me has been what's going on at the edge, and how what happens there is very different than what happens at the big data cloud level. So organizations that are going to win that battle are the ones who not only understand how to master the edge and the analytics and the compute and storage that goes on there, but really has a solid understanding of the kinds of decisions that are taking place there, so they can build out the right sort of analytics. Now, am I going to use reinforcement learning? Am I going to use supervised or unsupervised machine learning? I may not be able to do deep learning. In fact, probably can't at the edge, at least today, right? So I don't have time to grind through all that data. So there's all kinds of architectural challenges and data science challenge and data engineering challenges that need to be addressed in order to support the operations at the edge.
No doubt, and I see it like that too. I see like that fog edge piece, right? How do you better mine that? And really, it's no different than when you look at a repository and you look at putting some simple things like meta tags and information in place. You're looking at utilizing the edge more effectively so that you put out those false positives of 98 degrees, 98 degrees, 98 degrees. Just give me the meaningful data. We don't need to pass so much across, right? So that's interesting to say, and I've seen and worked in the field with different IoT applications. My experience has been from oil and gas, some retail, a little bit on the healthcare side, certainly from a telco side, from taking care of a building maintenance, right, and all the, better efficiency on heating, cooling, things like that. I'd be curious because, you see a lot about, capabilities today. You make the comment, and it's been out for years. Certainly, we've had data lake, big data, better, capture of that data with key, common indicators that are easy to pick up from that, right? But, looking at that, there's this point where you've got to have machine learning to get to real deep learning to do anything substantial beyond just looking at all this garbage data and maybe taking out some pieces to it. And we are starting to see some, better machine learning and deep learning. I'd be curious on your perspective on, things that you see in industries that, are utilizing that and how they focus on that, where the big, there's so many areas and touch points that I'd be curious from on that perspective.
Let me share one area that we're working on, which is around reducing unplanned operational downtime. So that's relevant for a number of industries, transportation and hospitality and healthcare and entertainment. And there's a number of industries where unplanned operational downtime has this huge financial and economic impact. You impact, getting people to where they want to get to. If you're an airline, there's transfer costs, and there's bad sentiment costs, and there's lost business costs. So unplanned operational downtime is a big issue. But it's not one use case. There's actually a number of different use cases to support that. Use cases around, first time fix, and optimizing inventory, and reducing excessive and obsolete inventory, and predictive maintenance, and performance degradation, and anomaly, blah, 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 blah. There's a whole bunch of problems that go into that. But that unplanned operational downtime could be worth, millions, tens of millions, maybe even more to organizations, depending on how they reside. So if you think about IoT, and one of the things I talk to customers is the decisions that you're trying to make to address unplanned operational downtime. The decisions haven't changed for years, decades, generations, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to identify a part that's going to wear out, or finding the right mechanic to do the right work, right? What's changed is the data, the latency of that data, the granularity of the data, and the analytics around that. So when we bring the business stakeholders, the technicians and the field engineers and the product designers together with a data science team who understands, and a data engineering team, so the data science team understands all the different tools that are available, that there are 27 different types of neural network algorithms out there. So which is the right one to use based on the problem I'm going after? And the data engineering teams to know how to decipher that data, bring in the most appropriate data, to transform it, to enrich it, to munge it, to all the things that they're doing. When you bring those people together, you get phenomenal results. But without any one of those three people, without the business stakeholder or the operational stakeholder, without the data engineer, without the data scientist, you got a two legs of a three-legged stool. It doesn't work very well. You need to have good balance, right? Which I don't really have, right? So,
me either.
So I think the challenge that we face in the IoT space isn't identifying the problems to go after. It's ensuring that we have the business stakeholders in line, on board, to help do that, and to help them envision what they could be doing to help address those problems, and how technology and data and analytics is going to help them get there. I'm not sure that makes any sense, but it does seem to be one way to make certain that we're not wasting cycles on the hype of IoT like we continuously do on every other technology that comes along. Let's simplify the conversation. Let's know how we're going to focus this thing. And then once we have that common goal, that well-defined hypothesis in place, then you bring the force of those three groups. You bring the community together to help address that problem.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense because there is certainly a bigger public play to it as well, and we're seeing more with that. And you look at regulatory side like GDPR and all these different impacts, right? And then you even take that a step further as you roll out blockchain, and you have real-time audit. There's no longer audit. It's real time, right? So it's like the source of truth, from that perspective. So certainly we'll see these things roll out. So looking at that, where do you see, because I know I've worked across a few different industries from an IoT perspective. I'd be curious, first from some big industry plays, where you've seen some excitement, and where things are now, and where you even see them in the next few years.
Well, for IoT, the big play is around manufacturing and maintenance, guided repair, and supply chain. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are really, and they impact almost every industry. You can pick an industry to make sure you have something as simple as excessive and obsolete inventory. Huge problem for a lot of organizations, especially organizations where technology is changing rapidly. So you got a whole bunch of inventory you're sitting in the back, some distribution center somewhere, or some site somewhere that is dead, right? And it's just occupying time, and it's eating up capital just sitting there. So you got to do something with it. So I think that those are common common problems around, manufacturing, yield optimization, and improving maintenance and reducing supply chain costs. I think those are probably the early winners in a lot of this space. I think where it ends up going is in the creation of smart. What I mean by that, so you think about smart cities and smart hospitals and smart schools and smart stadiums and such. Our ability to leverage all this data, combining it with the human data. So think about IoT data meets big data, right? So I now at a hospital know more about my patients. I know more about their situation. I know more about my operations, and so I can improve quality of care. I can reduce hospital readmissions. I can reduce hospital-acquired infections. Right? There's so many things that I can do that really helps me to make that happen. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to see the evolution of IoT, which today is focused around devices and machines. Eventually, we're going to move to a world of smart, where it's going to be the integration of not only what we're doing in IoT, but all the integration around humans and what they're doing. So to me, I think that's where it ends up going, and obviously it's got huge impact society-wise, financial-wise, and economically for everybody.
For sure. And I've got my Bears hoodie on here today, right? And I was, reading some stuff, interest on the NFL. For my fantasy team now, there's little sensors that they have in their shoulder pads, right? And they're having all this further edge data, right, that's feeding back in to the analytics they already know, the big data they already know. So they're, even in sports, that fun marriage, right? So you've certainly seen that.
Yeah, in fact, I wrote a blog with my son, Max. He is a sports scientist. He's working at a startup in Denver. And we had a conversation one day. We were talking about, I was talking about, preventing machines breaking down, right? Predictive maintenance. And he said, we're doing the same thing with athletes, using agent-based modeling to predict when an athlete has reached the point where they're going to break down. And I was totally shocked and impressed and how similar that the models we can use around machines are similar to the kinds of models we can use around humans. And if you think about it, what's a digital twin? Well, we all talk about digital twins as you got a digital twin of a wind turbine, we got a digital twin of a car or a pump or a chiller. Well, we're digital twins too, right? When Amazon looks at me, they got a digital twin of me sitting on Amazon that says, well, Schmarzo's likely to buy these products, buy these books, he's going to buy this and this. They understand all my behaviors and my tendencies and my patterns and my preferences, and they use that to predict and make recommendations to me. So I think what we're seeing is that these worlds of machines and humans are starting to become closer from an analytics perspective, and when we start doing that, then we're going to be able to integrate those together to create these, smart baseball teams. And we already got pretty smart, and smart football teams. The sports teams have been at the very leading edge of embracing analytics and now IoT to really help to prevent injuries and to drive on-field performance and such.
And business, it takes Moneyball to a whole other level, really. You look at that and you're able to define a lot of things real time. You're able to do things real time.
Yeah, my son was able to, using some of the data he had, was able to predict when a particular athlete was going to break down. And he was, the model had it almost to the exact day and hour when it was going to happen because of his workout patterns and his blood levels and the oxygen in the blood and all these things. He had all these terminology things I had no idea what he was talking about. But he said in combination, they were able to predict that this athlete had worked himself too much and he needed a break, and he didn't take a break, and unfortunately, he got his own break. Unplanned operational downtime.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you really touch on something there, because I kind of see this emerging tech, and you can, read lots from different, lots of content, really good contributors to what this whole bridge of artificial intelligence and emerging technology means. up to this point, we have historically been in command and control of technology. Through a keyboard, we can automate processes to do certain things and do more real time, but it's been at a control level where we've been managing that or putting, different things about that. But now to have actual machine learning where it's learning and understanding and doing things better and really advancing capabilities from what we can do as a human. But it's not from a perspective of fear. It's more from enablement, and I think that's a real mind shift. So I see this whole world, and what I love so much about what you do with the Dean of Big Data and getting that voice to this younger generation that can be a little bit confused about where things are going, is there is this this crutch where it's got to change drastically for how we're going to address what future technology is and means from how we do things today. And to me, I see it a lot about that digital twin, and is going to help and enable just like simple things that I've seen already or you've seen on robotics, where it's a extraskeletal thing for workers so that they're not hurting their back and capable. And driving, even Uber got out of the transportation, but there's still this big reality that it's an assist in driving, right? And you'd probably see a lot of that. So I'd be curious, how do we deal with this, right? Like, how do we deal with having people trained for jobs tomorrow that we don't completely even understand? And certainly, how do you, at those business leaders or those frontline decision makers and what they're looking at, how do you educate them on that? And that's an interest point to me, and I'd love to get your perspective.
So, two things. So when I work with my students, I tell them, don't learn TensorFlow. Learn how to learn TensorFlow. And why that's important is, 3 years ago, TensorFlow didn't even exist. And now it's the #1 machine learning library. 3 years from now, who knows what will be #1, right? So fixate less on the tools and more on methodology, process, and procedures. That is, and we teach, part of our classes, how to think like a data scientist. We teach business people how to embrace the fail fast, learn faster kind of mentality associated with data science. By the way, design thinking have the same characteristics. It's, to me, I'm shaggified by how similar the data science and design thinking mentalities are. So that's what we tell our students. And that's how we're ingraining our students, is very much don't be afraid of failure, as failure is a way that you learn. The challenge is our existing business executives, our existing management CXOs of the world have gotten to where they are, and you said it very well, T-Man, command and control environments. The CEO makes a command and it trickles down to the organization, and we are nothing but robots to trying to execute that command. And the power of the organization never gets realized, because the people who really know how things work, who have the insights that we can use to optimize the business operations, aren't sitting in Mahogany Row. They're down in the field doing the real work. And
Absolutely,
so we got this broken model where we think knowledge flows from the top down, and in reality the knowledge should flow from the bottom up. And to embrace a world like that, which is, by the way, which is how data science and design thinking thinks, right? Knowledge comes from the bottom up. In order to address that, I actually have very little confidence in many senior, older people in America right now.
Say it like it is, Bill. Yeah.
and I have even less confidence in a lot of the leaders in our organizations, because I don't think they know how to unlearn. Now, I've had to go through some unlearning moments when I went from Business Objects to Yahoo, and how we did analytics from a BI data warehouse perspective to a data science, data lake perspective was hard for me. It was a hard transition, because everything that I had held as gospel, I learned was wrong. Right? I had to jettison things that I held as true to my heart, that were part of me. Right? When I talked to customers, I thought in dimensional models, right? Conform dimensions. That's how we're going to address this problem.
It's about unlearning old habits, right?
Yep.
You know, like it's no longer a client-server world. There might be a little bit of that, but even your on-prem stuff is pretty browser-based, people, right?
Yep.
Like, let the
Yeah.
client-server go. Yeah, it's just a browser-based now. You know, it's all kinds of different things like that. But you do touch on a good point, and that's very interesting. And you know, I have some exposure and experience to that too. There is a big mind shift. And I think historically up to this date, industry has been trucking along how it has for 20 some years. Like now we're seeing this real scream of technology enable, and you're going to see some things, in my opinion, that are really going to kick that into high gear globally, third world country wise enablement. When you look at 5G, when you look at, you know, how blockchain can enable those organizations. I mean, there's a number of things to consider, right? You know, so, you know, certainly love to hear further perspective from you on that, right? Because how do you, you know, get that generation to shift and in a quick turnaround way? I think to some degree, companies are going to get pressed on it. You're going to see some early innovator adopters, and then you're going to see other ones that are going to bounce along the way. It'll be interesting to see. I'd love to get your view of it.
So I love how the older generation has classified millennials as lazy and not willing to work hard, and they can't move out of the house. And I think they're just manufacturing lies to justify their own existence, if I can be so blunt. The millennials I work with are creative, they're hardworking, they're not going to accept the rules of yesterday just because someone says you have to. And I think what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years is we're going to see a massive shift in how organizations are managed as those millennials move up the ranks. And before long, the millennials were running companies, and the old dudes and dudettes who can't make the shift, well, hey, they need baristas at Starbucks too. So I just think that I have a lot of hope with all the students I work with. I see the energy, I see the passion, I see the willingness to learn and unlearn. They know that the world in front of them is very different than the world that we face. And by the way, our world that we faced growing up was very different than the world our parents faced, right? Our parents grew up in a world where you joined a company and you worked for that company for 30 some years and you got a pension and you retired, you know, fairly comfortably. Our generation has learned that there is no loyalty at the corporate level, that we are in it for ourselves. And so instead of working for companies, we work for missions, we work for visions, we work for things that we believe in, and we'll bounce from company to company chasing that mission, chasing that vision. And our youth, I see it in my kids and I see it in the kids I train, is they understand the world's rapidly changing, they're accepting that, they understand it, they're embracing it. They're going to do great. They're going to do great.
There is such an amazing voice out there, and I think there is a lot of, you know, millennials, they're just not engaged, and they're disrespectful, they're this and that. You know, I feel like, you know, when I start talking or even hearing that, you feel like, oh my God, am I getting old? Are they getting old? But myself personally, I see it differently. I mean, I know I've gone through the kids with them going through college and real big challenges just in how college is delivered. An IT program that was changing so fast, the content couldn't keep up, and they're almost expecting the students to keep ahead of the content. How do you train someone like that? And no real soft skill, no soft touch, and they're shown and told, you know, this is why I've gotten involved with Your Passport to Grow. You know, and certainly, you know, Neville Gaunt from MindFit 2 touches some things that some executives in North America certainly could have some coaching and help on, right? But it is true, like, it is to me that how do you enable this young generation? Like, I'd seen some things, interesting things from analytics from IBM where they, you know, were showcasing this organization that was using artificial intelligence to find skill sets, to fill jobs in poverty neighborhoods where there was this right STEM skill set that individuals had in order to fill these new jobs, right? And it really effectively, it was so cool because it's using technology to find these individuals, to enable them, right? And I think there really needs to be, and I really love that you touched on that, right? There really needs to be a voice for them, right? There really needs to be this change, because there are incredible minds out there that, you know, are looking at the world of work in a different way, and they are, and this is a good thing. There should be a life balance. We don't need to work 60 hours a week, right? And if a digital twin can help that, by all means, if you could be hitting the golf course early, why wouldn't you want that, right?
Yeah, I find, so you know, I'm an executive fellow at the University of San Francisco School of Management, and now I was recently appointed an honorary professor at the National University of Ireland in Galway. And I find when I run classes with these students, I'm the one who learns the most. They're not afraid to raise their hand like Tom Hanks in the movie Big and say, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And so they force you to constantly think about how you're presenting things. I have found that conversations with students have forced me to throw bullshit out of the, sorry about that,
that's
to the
okay.
sideline, right? And to focus in on what are the real truths, what are the real facts. And like I said kind of earlier in the presentation here, T-Man, was that I don't teach tools, I teach approach. We teach our students how to think like a data scientist. And when we do that, when we embrace a data science methodology, which is very much geared around, you know, fail fast, learn faster kind of mentality, highly iterative, accepting of the fact that when you make predictions, you're never going to be 100%. It's like Yogi Berra used to say, you know, making predictions is really hard, especially predictions about the future. Mm-hmm. Right? So we know we're never going to be 100%. So how do you fail enough times so that you feel comfortable with the results that you're willing to act on it? So I love to teach because they are teaching me, and hopefully I'm staying young in the process.
Yeah, no, they certainly do. They're engaging and such a great perspective, and there should be some questions on why are we doing it that way. You know, did you know that you can do it this way? And more of that to fundamentally change that, and you know, to look at a different thing like that. I'd be really curious, you know, what you're working on or what you've seen or your thoughts, you know, from this whole IoT perspective, all these edge things happening, the emerging of not only technology itself from a capability perspective, but from a machine perspective as well, right? And a robotics perspective. What kind of projects and things are you engaged in, and you know, where do you see robotics really going in the next few years? Where are some significant changes that you see kind of on the horizon?
Well, I think things like robotics and augmented reality and, you know, things even like quantum computing and such will all play a role. But what I'm focused on is really digital transformation. When I work with customers, and I've got a good solid handful of them here at Hitachi Vantara that seems to be growing every week, with a couple more who really are really serious about digital transformation. And to me, as you know from my blogs and such, digital transformation, technology is an enabler, but it is not digital transformation. Digital transformation really is an economics conversation, helping organizations understand and identify where sources of market and customer value and wealth creation occur. It's about value chain analysis and about digitalizing your value chain processes to capture those processes. It's about design thinking to put the customer in the very center of your operations, right? So it's all about these other aspects that really drive digital transformation. And yeah, there's going to be robotics, and yeah, there's going to be IoT and sensors and artificial intelligence and neural networks, and they're all going to be key enablers in that process, but it starts higher up. It starts with really spending the time to understand and trying to identify those sources of wealth creation. It's, in the end, it's not a technology conversation. It's an economics conversation. And so that's where I'm spending my time. When I talk to customers, one of my favorite exercises I just did one last week was around, I call it monetize the pain. So when you create a customer journey map, when you create a customer journey map, you identify in that journey map the things that are of high value to the customer, things that they're really willing to pay for, and you can actually even, you know, monetize that more. But there's all these inhibitors to value. That's where you focus. I mean, my simple example is think about going to a restaurant. You can take my wife, we're going to go to a restaurant, and we're really excited about it. And one of the inhibitors of enjoying a restaurant is getting in the car, having to navigate traffic, find a parking spot, get into the restaurant, and then, you can't have any drinks or any drinks, so you got to drive back, right?
Yeah.
That's a real inhibitor. Uber has monetized that, right? I solved that problem. My app comes up, I call up Uber, and away we go, right? I don't worry about any of that. And I gladly pay Uber for that honor, for getting rid of that impediment. So if you think about the pain points in a customer journey and what happens, focus there, because that's where there's money. And it's interesting because in a data warehouse world, we aggregate out all the outliers in experiences, right? We got to have. In data science, we monetize outliers. It's those points of pain that we really look to go after and try to monetize.
Totally makes sense. And you touch on such a great point, because I've seen this repetitively in marketing, repetitively pushed with cloud adoption and cloud migration, and if you put this on the cloud, you're digitally transforming, and digitally transforming. It really is about the economics. Is what is the value payback, right? Where I've seen it enabled is, when you look at it from a, oil and gas perspective, it's those field workers where you all of a sudden, A, know where all the workers are, A, and B, know where all the levels are in trucks that they're driving and when they have to fill it, or who makes more sense to deploy here. You've now got all this information, and it becomes that data, that oil-rich data being actualized. That's where the value is. So in looking in that and working with so many diverse customers, around the planet, where are the points where you're seeing where it's that great economic value that organizations are gearing in? Like where it is maybe that where, I love the monetizing the pain, but where it is that identified where this is an area, or, maybe 3 of those areas you're seeing.
So I would say, generally speaking, we're seeing a lot of opportunities in reducing unplanned operational downtime. It's just a really great area for organizations. Here at Starbucks, when their machines are down and they can't make my chai lattes, there's an impact here. And I could very well go to Pete's just down the street here and get my fix instead, though their chai lattes aren't nearly as good as a Starbucks. So it's a problem that it faces everybody. But let me even back that up one step further. I think that you have to spend the time when you're working with customers, with companies, to understand what's important to that company. If you walk in and think that all manufacturers are focused on improving manufacturing yield, and you come in with that pre-conditioned in your head, you're going to miss what's really important to them. They may have other things that's important. So you really need to spend the time with your customers up front to understand what's important to you. What is the business trying to accomplish? What are your key business initiatives over the next 12 to 18 months? Ask some really simple questions. How are you guys going to make more money? How are you going to drive customer satisfaction? How are you going to improve profits? Ask some really simple questions and let them tell you. Don't assume for a second that you know what their problems are, and especially don't assume that you know their business better than them, right? So technology salespeople love to come in and talk about our customers are doing this and doing that and blah. We love to talk at customers, and we don't talk with customers, and we certainly do a crappy, shitty job of listening to our customers what their problems are because we don't ask the right questions. If we would do that, if we would take the time to ask questions and to help them envision how technology can help us solve that problem, now you're building a meaningful relationship. And I'll tell you personally, I love those kinds of engagements because I know we are solving something that's important. They're engaged. It'll be fun. So don't be wary of, in IoT, these are the 3 most important problems. Well, they very well may be the 3 most important problems, but don't assume those are the 3 most important problems for that particular customer.
It's such a great point, Bill. Like when you look at it, and I've gotten such a great insight from you on it, but it's true. It's just about, what is it about your business that's challenging you? What is it about your business you're trying to achieve? What is it about your business that you've got a wall in front of you that you'd like to break past? What is it about your business that your customers have been telling you, wanting to know or wanting to do? You know, that's where I think you get to some better, stickier conversations, as opposed to like, hey, Bill down the street is doing this, you better be doing this, right?
Right, right.
I think you make such a great point there, for sure, for sure. So you know, you've got all these other great things on the go, and you know, business focus, business wise, and you know, we also see some great posts from you where you're out in nature and you're stepping back, and you know, I love those hills and I love the outdoor pictures, right? So what's some things you like to do on a personal interest level, you know, to break away and take some time out?
So I really like hiking. Hiking for me is a way to kind of jettison everything that's in my head and start from scratch. I always carry a little notebook in my back pocket when I hike, because sometimes you get these great ideas. Some of them aren't worth a darn, but some of them are actually kind of, oh, that's interesting. And so when you flush your head, and I find that I have to allocate time to think. I've gotten to the point now at Hitachi Vantara, and they give me unlimited vacation time, right? It's kind of the new modern thing. I'll take Fridays off, and all I do is, and I don't go anywhere, but I just go hike and I think and I write things down. I just need that. I need that quiet time. So I like to do that. I love the beach. I've had a hard time getting away, though. I was recently in Bali where I had a chance to kind of chill, and I'm a surf and sand kind of person.
Oh yeah, so, you're making me want to feel sand between my toes right now.
No.
Yeah. A drink with an umbrella, you know, like right by the, sun coming down. You'll love it, for sure.
So those things help me to, they're quiet moments that give me a chance to think about, you know, what I'm doing, what's happening in my job. I really love my job. I find it very challenging. And I'm at a point in life where I'm very curious as far as, you know, what my second chapter will be. Eventually I'm going to, you know, retire doing this consulting CTO kind of work, and I'll certainly teach, because I find it so rewarding. So
I think you've got a great voice out there. I think when you retire from this, you're a real thought leader. You come and look me up, and we'll figure out how to get you out in social media, because I think people will want to pay for you to show up and share your great message, your history, your story, you know, your great approach to how you're taking on business and working with organizations. I think you'll do just fine. You know, like. You know, you let me know. We'll have a retirement party. We'll have a few beers. We'll plan her out. I'd love to discuss when you get to that point. But I'm still looking forward to everything you're doing along the way. So
retirement
sorry, go ahead.
So retirement's still several years out, but it's, you know, you're starting to think about it at my age.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to always plan ahead, right? And then you're better prepared, right? And I'm kind of a just act and do guy, right? Like you know, but I still know the importance of you better plan somewhat, right? Otherwise, who knows what's going to hit you? So, you know, looking at the next couple years and what you're working on, and you know, looking across the horizon and you know, getting that view of things. What are some things that you're working on that you're really geared in and exciting about, and some, you know, big projects, things, tasks in front of you that are like, you're top of the world, I'm getting after this?
Well, I think the thing that I find the most challenging, interesting aspect about my new job is I'm the chairman of the Grand Architecture team, which is setting a common architecture and approach across all of Hitachi, and how we develop software assets and how we commercialize and monetize those assets. It's given me a chance to work with not only the Hitachi America and Hitachi Vantara and other parts of Hitachi, but it's given me a chance to spend time and work with a lot of the folks in Japan. It's an amazing company. The people are smart, they're polite, and they're highly collaborative. And it's been an eye-opening experience for me personally to have a chance to. I'm like a kid in a candy shop. I got to be honest with you. There's so many great technologies out there, and there's so many research centers across all of Hitachi developing all this cool stuff. And part of the challenge of the grand architecture team is how do we monetize this stuff? How do we commercialize this stuff? And so it's the perfect next chapter for me, because it allows me to bring to bear everything I think about from an economics perspective, from a data science perspective, from a design thinking perspective, and from an architecture perspective, and how we bring it all together. So it's a huge challenge. There are many sleepless nights where I have a problem that wakes in the middle of the night, and I guess you can't shake it. But when you have those kind of challenge and you have those pain points are also opportunity points. So I'm definitely embracing that. And developing a team around me to help me to make all that happen.
That's fantastic. And it sounds really exciting. You certainly have an engaged crew that you're working with there and doing some incredible things, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more. So just in the last couple minutes here, what's some things you want to leave for the viewers? I mean, you made some great points of how you're approaching things, and some great points on the younger generation coming up. What's a couple things you'd like to leave out there, just as words of wisdom for the viewers?
Number one, don't be afraid to unlearn. Don't be afraid to toss aside everything you've learned in the past and start from scratch. Number two, begin with an end in mind. Really know what you're trying to accomplish, and then let the technology fill the gaps versus start with the technology. And the last one here I'm going to steal from my son Max. My son Max has a rule. Read 10 pages a day. Find a book that's on the peripheral of what you know about, maybe an area of interest, and read 10 pages a day. And it's amazing, if you follow the 10 pages a day rule, how much new stuff you're going to learn.
That's a really great point. I like that 10 pages a day because, as yourself, constantly reading blogs, different things like that, listening to podcasts, and any kind of vlog stuff is helpful too. But that 10 pages, I try to get, I got a book right now. I try to get a little bit of that paper page turn, right? Yep. That good feel of, going through that. And that is really good advice. I love that. 10 pages a day. It's not overwhelming. It certainly gives you perspective. And I know myself when I was, back in university days, and I scraped through high school. I got to play football basically, and drink beers and show up to where the parties were. I surprised everybody and myself that I got into university. And some great advice I got when I first started at college before university was, read an article in the paper. Read it to yourself. And read one paragraph out loud every day, right? And it will improve your grammar huge. And it did, right? So I think that's just a great knowledge perspective, and, certainly love that idea. Well, this has been so fantastic, Bill. Thank you so much for being a guest on Talk with T-Man here. It's Sunday. Certainly hoping you're going to maybe get out there and have a bit of a hike or, enjoy some of that lovely weather out there.
Yep, I'm all prepared for when we get done here. I'm going to take my bottle of my cup of artificial intelligence, and I'm going to be off for a hike.
Awesome. Well, we all got to have our artificial intelligence, so I'm with you there. Thanks so much and appreciate it. And we'll have to stay engaged, and I hope to chat with you in the future.
I love it, T-Man. Thanks for making this happen.
Thanks so much. Bye now.
Goodbye.
Awesome, dude. I think we rocked and rolled that. Here, let me just stop this here.